murderous individuals had a problem with reality that existed at a religious depth. As one of the members of the Columbine duo wrote, "The human race isn't worth fighting for, only worth killing. Give the earth back to the animals. They deserve it infinitely more than we do. Nothing means anything anymore." People who think such things view being itself as inequitable and harsh to the point of corruption, and human being I will sooner die than betray my own thoughts. Before I leave this worthless place, I will kill whoever I deem unfit for anything, especially life. If you pissed me off in the past, you will die if I see you. You might be able to piss off others and have it eventually all blown over, but not me. I don't forget people who wronged me. One of the most vengeful murderers of the 20th century, the terrible Carl Panzer, was raped, brutalized, and betrayed in the Minnesota institution responsible for his rehabilitation when he was a delinquent juvenile. He emerged enraged beyond measure as burglar, arsonist, rapist, and serial killer. He aimed consciously and consistently at destruction, even keeping track of the dollar value of the property he burned. He started by hating the individuals who had hurt him. His resentment grew until his hatred encompassed all of mankind, and he didn't stop there. His destructive